guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zickery of Space Command. And today I'm wearing two incredibly cool science fiction things. I'm wearing my Space Command t-shirt with the wonderful artwork on issue 1 by the great William Stout. And I'm also wearing my Starship Troopers jacket. And the cool part about this jacket, which I'll show off, yay, is that it was actually worn by one of the characters in the film, the character named Kitten. And that was the Latino guy with the mustache who keeps shooting the dead alien and getting green goop all over him. And this came available, and I grabbed it. So went out to dinner tonight in my cool Starship Trooper jacket. So there you go. And as I mentioned before, we're having a Kickstarter campaign for Space Command starting this week, so definitely check it out. And there's all sorts of great stuff from my career relating to Twilight Zone and Star Trek and Space Command and tons of other stuff for you to get. And if you're interested in buying Space Command shares where you get a percentage of my producers' net profits in Space Command, just email me at markzickery@gmail.com. Things are really starting to move very, very well and very actively on our various projects. So, that said, today I'm going to talk about For All Mankind, which, if you haven't seen it, is a very, very good show that's on Apple. And one of the fascinating things about science fiction is the ripple effect from show to show to show. People tend not to identify with actors and showrunners as they go from series to series in mainstream shows as much as they do in science fiction. And Michael Piller, who was the showrunner on Star Trek The Next Generation, and oddly enough my second cousin, which we didn't know when we worked together, is basically almost all of the writer-producers that he brought up through the ranks, he trained to become showrunners, and that includes Ira Behr and Richard Manning and Hans Beimler and Brandon Braga and Ron Moore. And Ron Moore, of course, went on to develop the most recent version of Battlestar Galactica, which was terrific. Then he went on to Outlander, and now he's created a show for Apple called For All Mankind. And it's an amazing show. It basically posits an alternate history where the Russians beat us to the moon, the manned landing on the moon, and so the manned space program continues all the way through to Mars. And the first 2 seasons we're basically just kind of dealing with the moon, and the 3rd season will deal with Mars. And I watched all first 2 seasons, and frankly, I think that the best Star Trek series on the air right now are not Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, and I haven't seen Lower Decks, and I haven't seen Strange New Worlds yet, but my favorite shows, I would say, are The Expanse, which is run by Star Trek alum Narain Shankar, and For All Mankind, which is run by Star Trek alum Ron Moore, and of course Space Command, which is Star Trek alum Mark Zickery. So I first met Ron Moore on Star Trek The Next Generation when we were both working on that show, as well as all the various other shows I was working on at the time, and then on DS9. And we've stayed friendly since then, and kept in touch. And he first told me the notion of For All Mankind very early on, way before he shot any of it, and I thought it was incredibly cool then. And basically, he's created a very believable time frame, a very believable alternative history. The cast is uniformly good, and it's taken us over a couple of decades of their journey, and then it'll jump, I think, 10 more years when it opens on season 3. But the season 2 finale was a very good resolution it's how you end a show well at the end of a season. And again, a lot of other shows could really take note from this, because he and his writing staff and the actors and so forth have created all of these characters you care about, and we followed their journeys, and it led to this big crescendo, spoilers, between a huge face-off between us and the Soviet Union. And it really had a great ending for Ed's character, where he has to come to a moment of decision on Pathfinder. Sally Ride as a character is in it. She's a real-life astronaut, of course. And Margot, who's now the head of Mission Control, is also enmeshed in all of this. And there was a Soyuz, Apollo mission connecting up, and tons of stuff. And the most touching finale to two of the characters were Gordo and Tracy, who started as a married couple, where he was sort of this macho astronaut the first season, cheating on her, and she was sort of the housewife, and then she aspires to become an astronaut and succeeds. Second season, he's fallen apart. She's now ascendant, but at the end of the season, he decides to get her back and goes to the moon, and he's slimmed down and he's really gotten his shit together, and she's kind of falling apart a little, and they reconnect. And then when the Russians take over the base, and inadvertently the Americans and Soviets firing at each other in the base is leading to a meltdown of the nuclear reactor, and they don't have spacesuits, they basically rig a mask and duct tape to get to where they need to get to, fix things, and knowing that it's almost certainly suicide. And it was my favorite part of the show, of the season finale. It was very touching, very moving, and it was a great end for those characters, because they come back together as equals and in love with each other and seeing each other for who they truly are, and both end up sacrificing their lives for others and being heroic. So it was a very, very, very clever. I'd never seen that gag before in any science fiction TV show or movie or book that I can remember. It was just really well done. And ironically, also in The Expanse this season, they had one of the characters have to go through a vacuum and survive, and you can for a few seconds. I mean, and then of course the great version of that scene was in 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Dave, basically doesn't have his helmet and he has to get back into the ship, so he fires the explosive bolts, and that's one of of course, the great scenes in all of cinema. But in For All Mankind, the wrapping themselves in duct tape and the dangers of that and what it does to them, very, very touching. And the period details are terrific. They have advisors. I just watched this really mediocre science fiction movie called Stowaway that does wrong what For All Mankind does right. And Stowaway's not terrible, but it's weak. And they don't talk like astronauts. They don't talk like scientists. It's underwritten, under-researched. I know they talked to actual experts, but it didn't take. Whereas with For All Mankind, they have the Mike and Denise Akuta as advisors, and they also have other advisors from NASA. And so they're really getting their history right. They're getting the details right. It just feels like they know what they're talking about. And it also brings in Buran, which was the Soviet space shuttle that essentially ripped off ours, but apparently was a better design in certain ways, and very short-lived, sadly. But it's just, For All Mankind gets things right. Stowaway is essentially, there's a great science fiction story called The Cold Equations that I highly recommend, and it's basically about how you can't stow away on a spaceship and expect to survive, because there's a very specific limitation based on weight to oxygen and food and water and so forth. And so Stowaway was sort of trying to be that, but it was just not. And it had a lot of really goofy things in it. And but The Cold Equations remains one of the great science fiction stories. There was an adaptation of it on X-1, and also there was an adaptation of it on the new Twilight Zone when they brought the Twilight Zone back, but I don't really remember that version well enough to have an opinion. But go back to the short story. I believe it's written by Tom Godwin, and you can find it probably even online, God knows. And but also, if you haven't checked out For All Mankind, and I've just ruined it for you, but but it's a really good show. And the third season, I've been waiting for them to get to Mars, and they will on the third season, because the end shot of the second season was a foot being planted on Mars. I have my guesses who that person will be, but we'll see if I end up being correct. But it's a very interesting show, and I really like it a lot. And and Ron Moore continues to be one of the great geniuses of televised science fiction, and I'm glad that I know him, and I quote him in my new book, Greenlighting Yourself. And we'll see if he ends up being one of my collaborators on the Showrunners Network. We've started those conversations, but we'll see where it leads. And it just continues. The adventure continues. So that's about it for now. It's an amazing time for science fiction, And I'm so glad to have been part of the golden age of TV science fiction in the 80s and 90s. And now this is the new golden age. But you have to be very selective in terms of what you choose to watch. And because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't fill the bill as well. But anyway, that's about it. I'm going to be posting a lot more often because we have a campaign going, and I have a whole bunch of ideas for videos to come, including weird stuff I believe, which should be very fun. And so that's about it for now. Thanks for everything, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye, guys.